All right, everybody, welcome to the Bald Eagle Podcast. I am Shawn Cressman. I am the Bald Eagle. Well, not a big show today. Not a lot has been happening. I took 2 weeks off, right? I'm returning from vacation, and to find not much has been going on. But we're gonna get through it, right? We still got stuff to talk about, and we're still Eagles fans, right? So let's do this. So the Bald Eagle Podcast. Let's talk about it for a moment here. The Bald Eagle Podcast is 100% Philadelphia Eagles. So we don't talk about anything else unless it affects the Philadelphia Eagles. Then we might talk about it. So sometimes we'll talk about our conference foes, you want to call them, but we will focus 100% on Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Philadelphia Eagle or the Bald Eagle Podcast is part of Philly Sports Alliance, which is our partner. We share to. Hey, Mr. Crockpot Media, what's going on? We stream to a bunch of places as part of Philly Sports Alliance, and we have a sponsor. La Terrain Watches is our sponsor. They have a lot of great watches and other things on their website. And if you put in the code PSA, you'll get a discount. So check that out. Buy something from them and put in the code. So there's 3 rules to the Bald Eagle Podcast. Pretty simple, but very important, especially to me. The first one. Waving to somebody on Instagram. The first one is no politics. So regardless of how important that is to you or not important or whatever else is going on in the world, we don't talk about politics at all. We avoid it completely. I guess you could argue that when COVID happened, we sort of talked about politics because COVID became political, but that's about as close as we got. Number 2, no personal information. I don't talk about my personal information, and I don't talk about the players' personal information. There's a lot of stuff, especially now when there's not much else to talk about. I think LaShawn McCoy was on a podcast talking about other players and rumors, and I don't buy into any of that stuff. You're only going to hear about the Eagles here, and none of that stuff. We don't talk about personal information or things like that. And I'm not censored. Now, the thing that makes the Bald Eagle Podcast unique or special is that during the season, not preseason, but during the season, regular season and postseason, we have the most in-depth play-by-play analysis. I go through each play one by one on the podcast on Wednesdays after the game, and we break everything down. So people that listen to and watch the Bald Eagle Podcast are the most informed Eagles fans out there by far. Okay, let's get to our countdown. Exciting. We're getting close. Wait to some people again here on Instagram. We're getting very close. 6 days, less than a week. Next Thursday, training camp begins, July 26th. Finally, things are going to start happening. We'll have more things to talk about, and especially when we're talking about players and how they're doing. We've heard, rumors again, and I don't buy a lot into rumors that Hurts is struggling. Whether that's true or not, who knows? Whether that matters or not, let's say we really don't know. In my experience going to training camps, back when Carson Wentz was the starting quarterback and was having good statistical years, he didn't look very good in training camp either. So I don't know if there's a lot of weight you can put in that, but we'll see. Now, all rookies and veterans report for the Eagles on July 26th, which is unique. We're only one of 10 teams in the NFL that have the rookies and veterans report on the same day. Most teams have it staggered. I believe you can have your rookies report 7 days early, but we're deciding to do them all at once. The first 5 days of training camp are limited to no contact with limits on practice duration. So day 2, you're limited to 90 minutes. Day 3, 105 minutes. Day 4 and 5 is 2 hours. And then after the first 5 days, you can start 2-a-days. So 2-a-days are when you have 2 practices in one day, if you're not aware. Even though you can have 2-a-days, you can only practice for a maximum of 4 hours a day, and only one of those practices can be padded with hitting. So oftentimes the morning practice is the physical practice. The afternoon, when it's hotter, is generally special teams and walkthroughs. Day 7, you can have 105 minutes in maximum per practice, and then day 8, you're up to 2 hours. Every day after the 8th day, you can do 2.5 hours. However, if you do 2.5 hours in your morning practice, your second practice is limited to 1.5, so that you don't exceed 4 hours per day. Just like last year, we're going to be holding some joint practices. First, we'll host a practice with the Browns at their practice complex in Berea, Ohio. We'll also have joint practices with Miami Dolphins in South Florida. Last year, we held them with the Jets and the Patriots. And if you remember, unfortunately for fans, I'm not sure if it's positive or negative for the team, but they took those joint practices much more seriously than they did training camp and especially the public practice. So we didn't get to see as much. They took them more, and they also took them more seriously than preseason games. So we didn't get to see as much of the players in preseason, especially the starters, as we had in previous years. They focused more on those private practices. Next up is the Hall of Fame weekend, August 4th through 7th, so less than a month away. That's in Canton, Ohio. Every year they have a huge Hall of Fame weekend and a Hall of Fame game to begin the preseason. This year, the Hall of Fame game is on Thursday, August 4th. The Raiders against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's at 8 p.m. Sunday, August 7th is the Philadelphia Eagles live open practice. Only one this year. It used to be two. It used to be at Lehigh and Unlimited. So they're slowly weaning us down. Hopefully it never goes to zero. But this year it is August 7th. On Sunday, it's at 7 p.m. Tickets are on sale. You have to pay to get in. It's only $10. And if it's the same as last year, all $10 goes to the Eagles Autism Foundation. So they're not making any money off this. All right, then we start preseason. For us, preseason starts on Friday, August 12th. We play against the Giants at home at 7:30 p.m. Week 2 of preseason, Sunday, August 21st at Cleveland, 1 p.m. And that's our only preseason game that'll be aired live on NFL Network. Week 3, Saturday, August 27th at Miami. That's at 7 p.m. And all preseason games will also be aired on NBC 10 and 94 WIP. Regular season, the NFL kickoff is Thursday, September 8th. Buffalo at the LA Rams, 8:20 p.m. And then our first game, week 1 at Detroit, Sunday, September 11th at 1 p.m. Week 2, we're at home against Minnesota, Monday Night Football, September 19th at 8:30. That's our home opener. Week 3 at Washington, Sunday, September 25th, 1 p.m. We get to see Carson Wentz again. Week 4 at Jacksonville. Week 4 against Jacksonville at home, Sunday, October 2nd, 1 p.m. And that is when Doug Peterson will return to the link, which I think will be exciting. It's going to be exciting to see how he does with the Jaguars and their starting quarterback. Week 5 at Arizona, Sunday, October 9th, 4:25 p.m. Week 6 at home, Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowgirls, October 16th, 8:20 p.m. And we have that early bye, Week 7. Week 8 at home against Pittsburgh, Sunday, the October 30th, 1 p.m. Week 9 at Houston, Thursday Night Football, November 3rd, 8:15 p.m. Week 10 at home against Washington, Monday Night Football. Carson Wentz has returned to the link, November 14th, 8:15 p.m. Week 11 at Indianapolis, Sunday, November 20th, 1 p.m. Week 12 at home against the Packers, Sunday Night Football, November 27th, 8:20 p.m. Week 13 at home against the Titans, Sunday, December 4th, 1 p.m. Week 14 at the Giants, Sunday, December 11th, 1 p.m. Week 15 at Chicago, Sunday, December 18th at 1 p.m. Week 16 at the Cowgirls, hopefully a significant win and some impetus to get into or exclude the Cowgirls from the playoff. Saturday, December 24th, Christmas Eve at 4:25 p.m. Week 17 against the Saints at home, Sunday, January 1st at 1 p.m. And our last game, Week 18 against the Giants, is to be determined, is the day and time. It's either Saturday or Sunday, the January 7th or 8th, time to be determined. So we start the season away. Third year in a row that's happened, longest streak since 2011, 2013. We don't have any back-to-back away games until week 13, which I think is positive. We close out the season with 2 home games. I think that's good. Unfortunately, I mentioned that early bye, earliest we've had since 2016 when we had it in week 4. They pushed them back with this new 17-game schedule. And then we have our opponents, the Giants and the Cowgirls, have their bye on week 9, and Washington has their bye week 14. We have 5 primetime games this year, which is the most in the league, tied for the most with 13 other teams. Most we've had since 2018. Now, We are in the NFL since 2000. We've had the second most primetime games with 94. Unfortunately, first is the Dallas Cowgirls. They've had 100. And us and the Cowgirls have played each other in primetime every season since 2007, with one slight exception. Technically, it wasn't a primetime game, but it was nationally televised in 2014. We played them on Thanksgiving. And then strength of schedule, we have in our whole division the easiest strength of schedule. We're third easiest with an opponent's winning percentage of .464. Dallas and Washington are tied for first with the easiest at .462, and the Giants come in fourth at .465. The Rams have the hardest schedule at .567. And then to finish the season, we have Sunday, February 12th, 2023 is Super Bowl 57 at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. All right. Now, so I've repeated our schedule, and that happens, every show. I'm going to repeat our schedule. I'm going to go through it. Once we're in the season, I'll start recapping wins and losses as well. But I'm also going to recap the draft. And I do this for not only my benefit, because I have a poor memory, but yours as well. The more I say this stuff, hopefully the more you'll remember it, and the easier you'll remember it, and that will help you with your own conversations, right? So quickly, we went over, we had a couple of draft picks in the NFL draft. Biggest splash, I think, was the trade, but we'll talk about that. So first round, 13th overall, we drafted defensive tackle Jordan Davis from Georgia. We traded the 18th and 101st overall picks to Tennessee for wide receiver A.J. Brown. Not technically a draft pick, but I think one of our best decisions on that day. Our second pick was a second round, 51st overall center Cam Jurgens from Nebraska, who has finally signed his rookie contract, which means all rookies are under contract. We saw third round, 83rd overall linebacker Nakobe Dean from Georgia. Sixth round, 181st overall linebacker Kyron Johnson from Kansas. Sixth round, 198th overall tight end Grant Calcaterra from SMU. And then we have a handful of undrafted rookie free agent signings. So they're going to attempt to make the team in training camp. We're going to weed through these very quickly as we go through training camp. And we'll go through how teams are required to make roster cuts as well, because I think that gives these guys a potential for spots on other teams. I think it's great that they tier the cuts and they have people cut earlier, but we'll go over that in a second. So undrafted rookie free agents, Josh Blackwell from corner from Duke. Reed Blankenship, a safety from Middle Tennessee State, which, is probably our weak spot at safety. He's going to possibly have an opportunity to get some time if he makes the team. Kennedy Brooks, a running back from Oklahoma. Britton Covey, a wide receiver from Utah. William Dunkel, offensive lineman from San Diego State. Noah Ellis, a defensive tackle from Idaho. Ali Fiad, linebacker from Western Michigan. Mario Goodrich, a corner from Clemson. Josh Jobe, a corner from Alabama. Josh Sills, an offensive lineman from Oklahoma State. Carson Strong, a quarterback from Nevada. The only guy who had any that Nick Sirianni commented about at all during the spring training. Jared Williams, offensive line from Miami, and Carrick Wheatfall, wide receiver from Fresno State. Carrick Wheatfall is the only player that tried out for the team, wasn't drafted, but tried out at those open tryouts that we've signed. All right. Let's get to some Eagles news. Not a lot going on, and some of this stuff is, just looking for stats, right, to share. Some interesting, not interesting news, but Lane Johnson, I don't know if he started it last year. He did it last year, but he has what's called a bro barn, where actually I think he's done it. This will be the second year, because I think there was some controversy that he did it in 2020 with COVID, and everybody was freaking out that it was going to cause spreads, or, I don't know. But he has a bro barn where he invites players to his house. Who knows what that looks like exactly. And they train. And this year, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, and Devonta Smith were all at Lane Johnson's bro barn, which I hope equals, in the NFL, timing and relationships with players is significant, especially between quarterbacks and wide receivers, because oftentimes routes have options. Depending on what the defense does, depending on the coverage, receivers choose to change routes, and the quarterbacks have to know what they're doing. There has to be a relationship there, so they can anticipate the route extensions or the route changes. So it's a big deal that they're all hanging out together and practicing before training camp even starts. I mentioned this before. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside put on 12 pounds this season to try and move from wide receiver to tight end. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea for him specifically because he didn't have a lot of success as a wide receiver, although we are a relatively tight end heavy team with Dallas Goedert and some of the backups. Currently, he's listed at 6'2", 237 pounds. To make that math quick for you, he was 225 last year. So 225 plus 12 is 237, right? Now, Devin Allen, he is an undrafted free agent that we signed. Back in June, he competed in the United States, the USATF New York City Grand Prix. I think it's the United States Athletic Training Foundation. I don't know what that stands for, but it's track and field. Maybe that's what it is. Athletic track and field. Anyway, in June, he competed in the 110-meter hurdles and had a time of 12.84 seconds, which is the third fastest time in history. Recently, he competed at the World Athletic Championships. Unfortunately, he was disqualified. I couldn't find out what his time was. I think he actually hit a world record, but disqualified because he was 1,000th of a second faster than what the World Athletic Championship governing body allows. So basically what that means, or what exactly happened was everything is electronic. So nobody's looking at him. Nobody said, oh, he's off by that much. Everything is electronic now. And the system or the electronic sensors, if you're quicker than 100 milliseconds after the gun, they assume that you anticipated the gun and they consider that cheating. He was 1,000th of a second under that 100 milliseconds. So he was at 99 milliseconds, I guess it was. And because he was within that 100 milliseconds for his push off the blocks, he was disqualified. I didn't do a lot of research on this because it's really not football related. It's just about one of the players. But it seems to me that this is an arbitrary and unpopular rule. So who knows if that'll change? But he was a good sport about it. I think he joked around. He can't be too fast. Can't be as fast next time. But anyway, just a little bit of, like I said, we don't have a lot of stuff going on, so we're talking about everything. By the way, throughout the show, keep an eye down at the little the banner going through. Kind of talks about all of our partners. Again, check them all out. We have a lot of partners at Philly Sports Alliance: Six Packs Coverage, La Terrain, and the Painted Lines. All people that we partner with as far as streaming and things like that. So check everybody out. Okay, so a couple of little stats here. And take them as much as you will. The Pro Football Focus, they rank the Eagles offensive line number 1. As it stands for the NFL in 2022. NFL.com has stated that the Eagles have the best offensive tackle duo in the league in Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. So far, those are, to me, very believable. I don't think that's anything outrageous. ESPN stated the Eagles have the 7th strongest roster in the NFL. Again, I wouldn't argue that. Pro Football Focus said that Jordan Mailata allowed the 2nd fewest quarterback knockdowns among left tackles in 2021. He only had 4. NFL.com and Next Gen Stats, they said the top explosive runner in 2021 was Jalen Hurts. The way they figured that one out is based on the total number and the percentage of 15-plus mile-per-hour runs. So he was number 1. The Eagles did announce a new word mark for their logo. I don't know if you've seen it. I should have brought up a visual. I apologize. I'll have that for next time. But it's not and it's just the name, the word Eagles that they've changed. It doesn't have the spikes and the eagle around it. It actually kind of looks like the Washington Commanders word, word art or whatever you call it. Very basic. They say it's modern, but I'm not a fan, to be honest with you. I prefer, it's a logo. We're a team. We're not looking to be streamlined and modern. We're supposed to flaunt our Eagles and have all that stuff in there. So I prefer the old one, but maybe I'm getting old. All right. So let's talk about, briefly, some Madden ratings, right? Again, not much else is going on. So let's talk about video games. I have a couple of Madden ratings here that I figured I'd share with you. We had 5 Eagles in the top 100 of all Madden ratings. Nobody over 91. And I don't know that that's inaccurate. I don't know that we have any single one player that would be rated, would be top in the league in their position. But number 1 on the Eagles, 52nd overall is Jason Kelce. and his overall Madden rating was 91. Brandon Brooks was 54th overall with a rating of 91. Darius Slay, number 70 overall with a 90. Fletcher Cox, 91st overall with an 89. And Lane Johnson, number 95 overall with an 89. Some other ratings that I thought I might share with you in case you weren't aware. Jalen Hurts was 25th out of all quarterbacks with a 74. And he was third in the NFC East. The only person that was I'm sorry, he's not third in the NFC East. He is second in the NFC East. Dak is first with a 91. Carson, and Dak is fourth in out of quarterbacks with a 91. Carson Wentz is 28th out of quarterbacks with a 73. And Daniel Jones is 35th with a 70. And I don't disagree with that 74, especially since we really don't know what Jalen Hurts is going to do. And everybody that I talk to, I tell, I don't know if they share the opinion, but I tell them that I think this year is all about Jalen Hurts, 100%. He has more weapons around him than I think almost any other quarterback has had, short of the year we went to the Super Bowl in 2004, when Donovan McNabb had Terrell Owens, Brian Westbrook, and everybody else. Since then, I don't think he's had any. We've had any better caliber special players. What do you call them? Skilled players. So it's really all about him. Really all about Jalen Hurts. We're going to see what he can do. Running backs, as far as Madden ratings are, Miles Sanders was rated number 24 out of all running backs with an 82. Ezekiel Elliott was rated number 10 out of running backs with an 88. Antonio Gibson, number 25 out of running backs with an 81. And Saquon Barkley, 13th with an 86. All fair. I think Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders is probably higher in running backs, but I don't know that he's better than Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley, right? And let's talk about some wide receivers. A.J. Brown, out of all the wide receivers, was rated 17th with an 87. Terry McLaurin, 11th with a 90. And CeeDee Lamb was the top Cowgirls receiver at 31 with an 83. And then Sterling Shepard was the top Washington Commanders receiver with the 39th out of all the wide receivers with an 82. Now, Devonta Smith wasn't our top receiver, but he was 47th overall with an 80. Again, probably fair. Good season, but not like he was rookie of the year or anything, right? So let's talk about some roster moves. Nothing significant, but we signed safety Jaquiski Tartt. He was a second-round, 46th overall pick by the 49ers in 2015. He's 6'1", 215, runs a 4.53 40, has a 33-inch vertical, started 64 of his 80 games played in San Francisco, and in his 7 seasons there, he had 367 tackles, 18 passes defensed, 4 sacks, and 4 picks. He started all 6 playoff contests that he appeared in, including Super Bowl 54. So he has experience. So we'll see how he can add to our team. And then we released corner Craig James, which I think was overdue. Never really made any significant contributions to the team. I think that was a good move. All right, let's get to some NFL news. I talked about roster cuts, so that's why I'm going to recap that, just so you're aware of how they work and they're tiered, because it's different. I think it changed last year. But instead of everybody having to cut down after the 4th or last preseason game, because there's only 3 now, it's tiered. So on August 17th, after the first preseason game, they cut from 90 to 85. On August 23rd, after the second preseason game, we cut from 85 to 80. And then after the third preseason game on August 30th, you got to cut down to 53. I think that's great. In fact, I would actually prefer them to cut more, maybe 10 at a time, go down to 80, then 70, maybe even 15. Because all those players then are flooded in the market and they're able to find other teams. And we're able to shop around for other guys that were cut, perhaps on teams that have, an overwhelming amount of talent in a specific position. So I'd rather they cut more and have it tiered more, but that's just me. All right, some roster management updates, and these are relatively somewhat new. Some of them are new. If you place a player on injured reserve, they must now miss 4 games. They had it at 3, I think last year in 2020 because of COVID. Up to 8 players can be designated to return from injured reserve, and a player can come back from injured reserve twice in a year. However, if that player comes back twice, they count 2 times towards your 8 total. So you have to be careful. They've increased the amount of players allowed on practice squads. It's 16 instead of 14. You can now have 6 veterans on the practice squad. All the other remaining players, the other 10 players, can have no more than 2 seasons in the NFL, credited seasons. Practice squad players can be elevated for 3 games. It used to be 2. To be elevated to more games, they have to be added to the 53-man roster. So once they've been elevated for 3 games, you have to put them on the roster or get rid of them. All right, it is time for the world-famous Bald Eagle Fact. And frankly, I think this is an interesting one. So the Bald Eagle Fact, if you're not aware, is essentially what it sounds like. We go through different things, facts about the Eagles, their years in the league, Pro Bowl players, position people, the position leaders, receiving leaders, quarterbacks, things like that. Today we're going to talk about the Eagles' 11th year in the NFL. So if you weren't aware, the Eagles joined the NFL in 1933. Original colors, interestingly enough, were blue and yellow. And the name Eagles had nothing to do with the bird at the time. It had something to do with, I think it was Franklin Roosevelt was the president at the time, and something about his New Deal or some political thing had to do with it. So didn't actually start off as the Eagles for the bird. But the 11th year in 1943 was the year of the Steagles. So for those of you who aren't aware, in 1943, the Eagles and the Steelers combined. So what we have is extra owners. So at the time, the owners of the Steagles were Alexis Thompson and Burt Bell, who were the Philadelphia Eagles owners, and Art Rooney, who was the Steelers owners. Head coaches were Greasy Neal for the Eagles and Walt Kissling for the Steelers. They played at both fields as home fields. Shibe Park was our home field, and Forbes Field was the Steelers field. Now, the reason that they were called the Steagles is because on December 7th of 1941, America entered World War II after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Roughly 600 NFL players joined the armed forces to fight for their country. The players who remained in the States to play football were mostly those who were deferred from the draft. There was a stigma and shame associated with players who were healthy and did not go to fight, even if they had no control over being chosen, because you were drafted. It wasn't like you could offer your service. They had to draft you. The players that were left behind were either unfit for military service because of physical or dependency reasons, age, or active servicemen who obtained leave to play. Now, I said dependency. In this day and age, you might think to yourself they're a drug dependent, right? And that's not at all the case. Dependency meant somebody was depending upon them. So, for example, there were three levels, and this is probably more Army stuff, but I found it very interesting. There were 3 levels that you could that would qualify you for deferment or not getting drafted. The first one, 3-A, was a man who had people dependent upon him. So for support. So we're talking about somebody that had a wife, parents or grandparents, brothers or sisters that were financially or some way dependent upon that man. They wouldn't necessarily not draft him, but he was not a priority until everybody else was taken. Now, in 1943, in late time 1943, we needed more men in World War II. So instead of anybody that was had a dependent person on them, they actually only counted men who had children born prior to the attack on Pearl Harbor. So the cutoff date for that for your child was September 15th, 1942. If they were born before then, you had the ability to not go to the war. If they were born after that, your ass got drafted and you fought. There were also 2As, 2Bs, and 2Cs. These are men who worked in critical civilian occupations, war industries, producing and preparing ammunition, weapons, and materials, or agriculture. They were excluded. And then last, which is what comprised most of the NFL players that were left behind, were 4-Fs, which are men who were deemed unfit for military service due to ailments, chronic ulcers, which I thought was an odd thing to point out, improperly healed injuries, defects of the extremities, bad hearing, and partial blindness. Now, I don't have a list of all the Steagles who had some of those issues, but Tony Bova, who was our leading receiver with 17 receptions, was blind in one eye and partially blind in the other. How the hell he caught a football being blind in one eye, which means he has no depth perception. How he catches a football, I have no idea. We have people like Jalen Reagor, who has probably 20/20 eyesight, can't catch a football. Ed Michaels, which was our guard for that year, was nearly deaf. Ray Graves, which was our center, was deaf in one ear. John Butler, a tailback, started one day after being classified 4-F for poor eyesight and bad knees. So that was me. Better eyesight now, but still got bad knees. So after these 600 players went to fight in the war, which is amazingly noble, I would guarantee you that not nearly this high of a percentage of NFL players would fight for our country now. The Eagles were left with 16 players, which was enough, but the Steelers only had 6. So Alexis Thompson, and the owner of the Eagles and owner of the Steelers, Art Rooney, decided to merge the two teams in to the Steagles. Now, technically, the official name, according to the NFL, was the Phi Pit team. The Phi Pit team. There was no Steagles officially. It's just a popular name that's caught on, and I think it's great. It's fair to each other. Now, one thing to note, the Steelers accepted the temporary name of Steagles. The Eagles did not. In Pittsburgh, through the media, they were referred to as the Steagles. In Philadelphia, the media would not surrender, and they still called them the Philadelphia Eagles, even though they were a combination. I mentioned they had shared coaches. Greasy Neal was our coach for the Eagles. Walt Kisling was the coach of the Steelers. They shared the job, but they hated each other. And there were numerous instances where they fought. One time, I think Walt Kisling was late for practice, so Greasy Neal installed a whole different offense. So there was a lot of shit going on with those guys. Now, at the time, being an NFL player was considered a recreational activity. It was not considered a career or a job. So one of the requirements to play on the Steagles was that you had to hold a full-time war job. And all 22 Steagles worked at defense plants. Interestingly enough, Ted Doyle of the Steelers worked at Westinghouse Electric, and he later tracked his work back to the Manhattan Project. I had no idea what that was up until now. The Manhattan Project was our effort, America's effort, to build the first atomic bomb. So some of those guys contributed to building the first atomic bomb. An interesting stat, during the season against the New York Giants, the Steagles fumbled 10 times in the game, which as of today is still a single game record. The Steagles ended the season 5 wins, 4 losses, 1 tie, and that gave them 3rd place in the NFL Eastern Division. They actually would have been in a 3-way tie had they won their last game, but I believe they lost to the Patriots, the Boston Patriots. I might be misspeaking, but they lost their last game to go 5-4-1 and became 3rd place. So for 1943, the NFL Eastern Division, which is where we were, the Washington Redskins were 6-3-1. They were tied with the New York Giants, who were also 6-3-1. Then we had the Steagles 5-4-1, and then the Brooklyn Dodgers, which were 2-8. Unfortunately, this was the first year that the Eagles had some sort of winning season. We had not had a winning season up until 1943 as the Philadelphia Eagles. We needed a little help to get that done. It was the second time that the Pittsburgh Steelers had a winning season. So they weren't doing much better than us either. The Steagles defense led the league in total yards allowed, rushing yards allowed, and yards per rush. Our offense led the league in rushing attempts, yards, and touchdowns, and was 2nd in yards per attempt. Our leading quarterback was Roy Zimmerman. He threw 124 passes. He completed 43 of them, which is a whopping 34.7%. God awful in the current age of football, but things were significantly different in 1943 for the passing game. You didn't just throw high percentage short passes. Most passes in the early part of the league were bombs. They were 50-50 balls. So if it got intercepted, no big deal. It was like a punt. And for more proof, even though he not only did he only complete 34.7% of his passes, he had 846 yards. He had 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. That would get you benched real quick currently. Actually, a player with these numbers would never play another game as a quarterback. And his quarterback rating was 44. Back then, quarterbacks ran more often as well. And, I take that back. I don't want to say more often. we are turning into more of a quarterback running league. So we're reverting to what the way the game started. But Roy Zimmerman also had 33 rushes. He did lose 41 yards on those 33 rushes, though. And Roy Zimmerman, back then, everybody played Iron Man. You didn't just play one position. You played more than one. You played offense and defense. He also had 5 interceptions as a corner, Roy Zimmerman did, which tied the team lead. Our leading rusher was Jack Hink. He had 116 rushes for 571 yards. He's an average of 4.9 and 3 touchdowns. Not significantly different than our leading rushers pre-Miles Sanders, actually including Miles Sanders. I don't know that he had much more than that. And Tony Bova, I mentioned, was our leading receiver. He was completely blind in one eye, half blind in the other. And I dare you to go out and close one eye and squint in the other and catch a football. He had 17 receptions for 419 yards, 24.6 average, and 5 touchdowns. And that led the team in touchdowns as well. All right. That is the end of the Bald Eagle Fact and the end of the Bald Eagle Show. I appreciate you listening. But before you go, don't go so quick. Do me a favor. Check me out at Bald Eagle 4133 and the Bald Eagle Podcast on social media. Remember the Bald Eagle Podcast. If you just put in Bald Eagle, you're going to get a lot of actual bald eagles, not what you're looking for. Keep an eye out, especially beginning next week when we have. Actually, I'm going to be a day early for training camp. So next week we'll have a day on our countdown. Right? No, it's Tuesday. It starts. 26th is Tuesday, right? So I'll have a little bit of information about training camp. We'll have more to talk about. But I'm on Wednesdays at 6. So keep an eye out for the Bald Eagle Podcast Wednesdays at 6. I mentioned a lot of our partners, and you've been seeing them stream at the bottom. We partnered with Painted Lines. You can find us on their YouTube channel. We partnered with Six Packs Coverage. Six Pack Coverage is a national media company. They're in Tennessee. And they don't just have podcasts about sports. They have podcasts about fitness, travel, food, even finance. Now, I mentioned I'm part of the Philly Sports Alliance. We are not just you're not just the Bald Eagle Podcast. We have many shows. Let me bring that up for you so you can take a nice little gander. All right. So this is our lineup at the Philly Sports Alliance, and we essentially have almost every sport covered. The only one we don't have a dedicated podcast for is it looks like it's basketball. So you look at the schedule here. Mondays at 6 p.m. we have the Football Smack Talk show that features Ryan Reese and Eric Ward. They talk about all NFL, but of course those two are Eagles fans, so they put a little more emphasis on the Eagles. On Mondays at 7:30, watch the Diamond Club podcast. The Diamond Club podcast is an all Phillies podcast, and that features John Hunter, Chris Lahiff, and Danny Hart. Tuesdays at 6:30, the Philly Broadcast. That is a 4 Philly sports podcast featuring Ryan Reese and Ryan Finneran. So that is all 4 sports, but just Philly teams: Phillies, Flyers, Eagles, Phillies, Flyers, Eagles, and Sixers. Obviously, I'm not a basketball fan. Wednesdays at 6, of course, your eyes are glued to whatever social media channel you prefer to watch the Bald Eagle Podcast and find everything you need to know about the Eagles, excluding rumors and bullshit. Wednesdays at 8, after my show, we have Mixed Sports. That is a football podcast featuring Eric Ward and Jay Landry. And then Thursdays at 5:30, Tendies on Pattison. That is a Flyers show featuring Paul Bacho, Jack Griffin, and Chris Lahiff. And last but not least, we have Thursdays at 7, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs, a wrestling podcast featuring Eric Ward and Joe Barry. So check out all those podcasts. Check out the Painted Lines. Check out the Six Packs Coverage. Check out all our socials. Go buy some watches at La Terrain. And most importantly, go Birds.